Jin-woo Kwon heard the melodic language before he saw who was speaking it. It was his mother's native tongue, spoken with a crisp, clear accent from the capital city that made his chest tighten with an unexpected pang of emotion. He looked up from the leather-bound menu to find their waitress, a young woman with kind, dark eyes and a shy smile, conversing with his mother as if they were old friends in a village by the sea. No one ever spoke to his mother in her first language. Not anymore. The restaurant was called Soul House, a name that was a quiet promise of authenticity, tucked into a corner of the city's bustling Korean district where tourists rarely wandered. It was the kind of place that served real food, the kind his mother had grown up with, not the Americanized version with too much sugar and not enough of the deep, fermented spice that was the heart of the cuisine. Jin-woo, a powerful Korean Mafia boss whose name was spoken in whispers throughout the city's underworld, brought his mother here every Friday night without fail. It was their tradition, a silent ritual of love and duty started 10 years ago when his father died. His mother had looked at him then, her eyes hollowed by grief, and confessed she couldn't remember the last time someone had taken her to dinner. Dressed in his signature, impeccably tailored black Mafia suit and a pristine white collared shirt that was a stark contrast to the darkness of his profession, Jin-woo had vowed she would never feel that forgotten again. Tonight, Mrs. Kwon sat across from him, a portrait of quiet dignity in a simple, elegant dress inspired by traditional designs, her silver hair twisted into the same graceful bun she had worn since he was a child. She possessed a timeless beauty, all sharp, aristocratic cheekbones and expressive hands that danced in the air as she thought. Her eyes, dark and knowing, held entire conversations without a single word. She was studying the menu, a familiar pantomime given that she always ordered the same thing, a fiery, bubbling stew made with fermented cabbage, a taste of a home she hadn't seen in decades. Jin-woo was about to offer a gentle tease about her predictability when their waitress appeared at the table. "Good evening," the young woman said, her voice soft but clear, the words spoken in the language of his parents. Jin-woo's head snapped up, his guarded composure momentarily broken. His mother's menu lowered slowly to the table, her eyes wide with a profound, soul-deep disbelief. The waitress stood beside them, a small notepad in her hand, looking a little nervous, but thoroughly professional. She was a strikingly beautiful 26-year-old African woman, petite and poised, with dark brown hair pulled back in a neat, simple bun that highlighted the elegant line of her neck. Her hazel eyes were warm and held a light that seemed genuine. She wore the standard uniform of black pants and a white button-down shirt, yet when she had spoken in his mother's language, her entire being had transformed, her face becoming animated and incredibly warm. "You speak the language of my home," Mrs. Kwon breathed, her voice thick with emotion as she switched immediately from English. "Yes, ma'am." The waitress smiled, and it was a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. "My mother is a professor of East Asian studies. I grew up speaking it at home. It was our special language." A professor, Mrs. Kwon's hands, usually so composed, flew to her chest. "How wonderful. My family is from the capital. The city is so beautiful." "The most beautiful," the waitress agreed, her voice full of a longing that mirrored his mother's. "I dream of working there someday. I'm studying to be a chef, and there's an entire universe to learn from traditional Korean cuisine." Jin-woo, a man accustomed to observing every detail, every shift in power in a room, watched this exchange with a feeling he couldn't quite name. His mother was leaning forward, her posture, which was usually so reserved, now open and engaged. She looked more alive than he had seen her in years, her face alight with a forgotten happiness. "A chef." Mrs. Kwon clapped her hands together, a sound of pure delight. "This is a wonderful dream. What dishes do you study?" "Everything I can, but I love the traditional food the most." The waitress's enthusiasm was a palpable energy. "The regional dishes, the recipes that have been passed down through families for generations. That's the history I want to preserve and share." Evie. Mrs. Kwon was beaming, her smile erasing years of quiet sorrow from her face. You know, my grandmother, in her small town south of the capital, she made the most incredible dish of sweet potato starch noodles with stir-fried vegetables. I have tried to recreate it here, but it's never the same. The noodles, the seasoning, something is always missing. Perhaps the ratio of soy sauce to sesame oil, the waitress suggested thoughtfully. Or maybe the specific way the vegetables are blanched to keep their crispness. The traditional style from that southern region is very precise about the balance of sweet and savory. Mrs. Kwan stared at her, her mouth slightly agape. Yes, that's exactly it. That is the secret. How could you possibly know? I wrote a research paper on the regional variations of that specific noodle dish for my culinary program, the waitress admitted, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. I might have gotten a little obsessed with getting the details just right. Jean Woo's mother laughed, a real, uninhibited laugh that filled the small space around their table. The sound struck something deep within his chest, a complicated chord of love and guilt. When was the last time he'd heard that sound? He could not remember. It wasn't the polite, restrained chuckle she offered at his own feeble attempts at humor, but real, bubbling laughter, born from a moment of pure, unexpected joy. "What is your name, child?" Mrs. Kwan asked, her voice gentle. "My name is Amara. Amara Jones." Amara. Mrs. Kwan repeated the name, tasting it, finding it beautiful. A lovely name for a lovely girl. "I am Minjun, and this is my son, Jinwoo." The waitress, Amara, finally turned her full attention to him, and Jinwoo, the feared Korean Mafia boss, saw the exact moment recognition dawned. Her warm eyes widened slightly, a flicker of fear passing through them like a shadow, an expression he was all too familiar with. She quickly suppressed it, her professional courtesy snapping back into place like a shield. Everyone in this part of the city knew the Kwan name. Everyone knew what it signified: power, danger, a world that operated by its own rules. "Mr. Kwan," she said carefully, her perfect, fluid Korean disappearing into a more formal, accented English. "It's Jinwoo," he corrected, his voice softer than he intended. He was used to this reaction, the instant wall of fear and deference. But seeing it from her, after witnessing the genuine connection she'd made with his mother, bothered him more than it ever had before. "And thank you for making my mother smile. That doesn't happen nearly often enough." Something in Amara's guarded expression softened. The professional mask wavered. "Your mother is lovely. It is truly my pleasure to speak with her. Have you worked here for a long time?" Mrs. Kwan asked, seamlessly switching back to her native tongue, eager to keep the connection alive. "For months now," Amara replied in the same language, her relief at returning to the familiar cadence evident. "I work nights and weekends while I'm in school. It helps me learn about how a real restaurant operates, and the chef here, he's very kind. He lets me watch him work sometimes when it's low." "A smart girl," Mrs. Kwan nodded with maternal approval. "And your skill with the language is perfect. Your mother has taught you well." "She was insistent that we speak it at home." Amara smiled, a private, fond memory flickering in her eyes. "She said I needed to know where part of my heart came from. My father is American, so English was everywhere else. But at home, with my mother, it was always the language of her heart." Jean Woo silently filed away every detail. A dual heritage that explained her unique beauty, a deep connection to her mother, an ambitious drive, a profound passion for food, and a youth that felt both vibrant and vulnerable. She was too young, he told himself, for him to be noticing the graceful way her hands moved when she talked, or the way her smile seemed to light up her entire face from within. "We should order," he said, his voice more abrupt than he intended, a gruff attempt to regain his emotional equilibrium. Mrs. Kwan ordered her usual stew, but not before engaging Amara in a detailed discussion about 3 other dishes on the menu, listening to her enthusiastic recommendations with rapt attention. Jinwoo ordered without really paying attention, his mind elsewhere, replaying the scene that had just unfolded. When Amara left with their orders, his mother turned to him, her eyes suspiciously bright with unshed tears. "Jinwoo," she said quietly in her native language. "That girl, she spoke to me like I am a person. Not an old woman to be pitied, not someone to be patient with. A real person. She reached for her water glass, her hand shaking slightly. I have lived in this country for 35 years. 35 years. And no one, not one person, speaks my language with me except for you. The other ladies from my church, they're all gone now. They have passed away or moved back to the homeland. I am alone here with this language that I love, this piece of my soul. And no one wants to hear it anymore. Jinwoo felt a familiar, sharp pang in his chest. I speak with you, Mama, he said, his voice low. You do, my son, and I love you for it. But you learned it here. It is the language of an American son speaking to his mother. That girl, she speaks like my own mother spoke. Her words sound like home. She wiped at her eyes quickly, embarrassed by her display of emotion. It is a small thing, I know, but to me it is not small at all. Tonight that girl gave me a gift. For just a few minutes, she made me feel like I was home again. Jinwoo looked across the restaurant to where Amara was speaking with the elderly chef through the pass-through window to the kitchen. Her face was animated, her gestures expressive and focused as she discussed something with him. The typically stern chef was nodding, a small, rare smile on his face. She's special, he heard himself say, the words escaping before he could stop them. Yes, his mother's eyes were knowing as they met his. Very special. When Amara returned, she carried a small, complimentary plate that hadn't been on their menu. Chef made some extra seaweed rice rolls, she explained, placing them on the table. He makes them in the very traditional style. I thought you might like to try them while you wait for your entrees. Mrs. Kwan picked up a piece and bit into it, her eyes closing in concentration. When she opened them again, they were wet with fresh tears. It is perfect, she whispered in her mother tongue. Exactly like my grandmother used to make, she laughed then, a sound thick with tears and joy. I am a silly old woman, crying over rice rolls. You're not silly. Jinwoo's voice was rough with an emotion he rarely allowed himself to show. And you're not old. He watched his mother savor the simple dish, her face transformed with each bite, a roadmap of memory and nostalgia. In that moment, he made a decision. He was coming back to this restaurant, and it had absolutely nothing to do with the food. The following Friday, Jinwoo arrived at Seoul House alone. His mother had a function at her church, a celebration for one of the elders, and he had assured her he would eat at home. Instead, he found himself walking through the restaurant's doors at 7 o'clock, his eyes scanning the room for a dark-haired waitress with a shy smile. He let the hostess, a woman who had known him since he was a boy, seat him at a small table in Amara's section, pointedly ignoring the knowing look she gave him. A powerful man like him, the undisputed Korean Mafia boss of the city's east side, showing up alone on a Friday night was a statement, whether he intended it to be or not. Amara approached his table, her professional composure slightly ruffled. Mr. Kwan. I mean Jinwoo. I didn't expect to see you tonight. Is Mrs. Kwan well? She's fine. A church event. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. I still had a craving. The food here is too good to miss. A small, genuine smile tugged at the corners of her lips. I'm glad you think so. Can I get you something to drink this evening?
Surprise me.
Whatever you recommend, he said, wanting to see what she would choose. Her eyebrows rose in slight surprise. You want my recommendation? You're studying to be a chef, he reasoned. I figure you know what pairs best with the menu. The smile grew, erasing some of her nervousness. The raspberry wine. It's not the most expensive bottle, but it has the perfect balance of sweet and tart to complement the chef's style of cooking. Then, that's what I'll have. She made a note, then hesitated. Your mother, she spoke about you all week at her church. She told everyone about the waitress who speaks her language. I think half the congregation wants to come in and meet me now. A warmth he hadn't anticipated spread through his chest. She liked you. Very much. I liked her, too, Amara said softly. She reminds me of my own grandmother, her expression dimmed for a moment. I don't get to see her as often as I'd like. We try to visit every few years, but the plane tickets are expensive and with school. She trailed off, likely realizing she was sharing too much with a customer, especially this customer. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear about that. Let me get your wine." "Wait." Jinwoo's voice, accustomed to commanding obedience, stopped her in her tracks. He softened it. "I want to hear about it. When was the last time you were able to go?" She bit her lower lip, considering his sincerity. "Finally," she answered. "It was 3 years ago, right before I started my culinary program. My parents took me as a graduation present. We spent 2 weeks traveling the capital, the southern coast, the Big Island." Her eyes took on a distant, dreamy quality. "I ate at every restaurant I could afford and some I couldn't. I took notes on everything. That trip is when I knew, for sure, that this was what I wanted to do with my life. And now," she took a quiet breath, "now I'm saving up. I want to do a stage, an internship at a Michelin-starred restaurant in the capital after I graduate next year. It's incredibly competitive and most of them don't pay, so I need enough money to support myself for at least 6 months while I work there." She smiled a little self-consciously. "That's the dream, anyway." Jinwoo looked at her, really looked past the pretty face and the uniform, and saw the fierce, unyielding determination beneath her shy exterior. This was not a girl with a fleeting fancy. This was a woman with a concrete plan, willing to work 2 jobs and save every penny to make her dream a reality. "That's a good dream," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "And you'll make it happen. I can tell." Over the next month, Jinwoo became a fixture at Seoul House. Not just on Fridays with his mother, a tradition that now included long, happy conversations between Mrs. Kwan and Amara about recipes and regional variations, but on Tuesdays and Thursdays too. Always in Amara's section, always ordering whatever she recommended. He learned that she was 26, 7 years younger than him, a gap that should have mattered more than it did. He learned she had never had a serious boyfriend, being too focused on her education and career. He learned that when she spoke about food, her shyness evaporated completely, replaced by a fiery, articulate passion. And he learned, with a growing sense of dangerous fascination, that she was noticing him too. He would catch her looking at him from across the room, a quick blush rising on her cheeks when their hands accidentally brushed as she set down his plate. She began to linger at his table a little longer than necessary, asking about his day, sharing a funny story about the chef. It was his head of security, his most trusted man, who finally called him on it. "Boss," Kai said one Tuesday evening as they sat in Jinwoo's stark, minimalist office above the import-export business that served as a front for his real operations. "We need to talk about the girl." Jinwoo didn't pretend not to know who he meant. He continued to stare at the financial ledgers on his desk. "What about her?" "You've been to that restaurant 9 times in the last month," Kai stated, his voice calm and factual. "Always requesting her section. The tips you leave are bigger than most people's rent. People are noticing." "The wrong people." Kai leaned forward. "So, you're making yourself predictable, and you're making her visible. If anyone wanted to get to you, she would be an easy, vulnerable target." Jinwoo's jaw tightened, a muscle flexing in his cheek. He had thought about that, of course he had. He was a Mafia boss. Calculating risk was second nature. But the idea of simply staying away from Amara felt impossible. It was a weakness he hadn't anticipated. "No one is going to touch her," he said, his voice a low growl. "Are you sure about that?" Kai pressed, refusing to back down. "Because word is spreading on the street that the Korean Mafia boss Jinwoo Kwan has a type now. A pretty, innocent waitress who doesn't know what she's getting into." Kai's voice was careful but firm. "I'm not saying you shouldn't see her. I'm saying you need to be smart about it. Either you make it official, bring her into your world properly with our protection, or you walk away now, before someone decides to use her to hurt you." Jinwoo stared at his second-in-command, hating that he was right. "She doesn't know what I really do. She knows the name, the reputation, but she doesn't know the details." "She's not stupid, boss. She's figured out enough. The question is, does she want to know more? Or is she going to run the second this gets real?" That was the question, wasn't it? He had been careful to keep things light, the friendly, wealthy customer. But the truth was he wanted more. He wanted to take her to dinner somewhere that wasn't her place of work. He wanted to hear about her dreams without a notepad in her hand. He wanted to know if the undeniable spark he felt between them was real, or if he was a fool, imagining things that weren't there. "I'll handle it," Jin-woo said finally, his voice dismissing Kai. The following Friday, he brought his mother to dinner as usual, but this time, he had a plan. When Amara came to take their order, her familiar warmth a welcome sight, Jin-woo said, "Actually, I have a question for you first." She looked at him, her pen poised. "My mother's birthday is next month. I want to throw her a dinner party at my house. Something special, truly authentic. I don't trust the local caterers to get it right." He paused, meeting her gaze. "Would you be willing to cook for us? I'll pay you, obviously. Whatever your professional rate is, plus all expenses." Amara's eyes went wide with surprise. You want me to cook for your mother's birthday party?" "If you're interested," he said, keeping his tone professional. "I know it's a lot to ask." "No, I'd love to." The enthusiasm burst out of her before she could contain it. She blushed. "I mean, yes, I would be honored." "How many people?" 10, maybe 12. "Just close family and friends," Jin-woo said. "It must be the traditional food of my hometown," Mrs. Kwon cut in before he could answer, her eyes shining. "The food of my childhood. The things I can't find here." Amara's face took on that focused, intense expression Jin-woo had come to recognize. Her chef brain was kicking in. "Of course. I'd need to do some deep research, and I would need to sit down with you, Mrs. Kwon, to talk about the specific dishes, get all the details about how your family made them. And I would definitely want to do a full test run of the menu to make sure I can execute everything perfectly before the actual event." "Whatever you need," Jin-woo said, feeling a sense of victory. "Name your price." After she left the table, his mother turned to him with a knowing smile that was both loving and exasperating. "You like her? Don't start, Mama. I see how you look at her," she said softly, ignoring his protest. "Just like your father used to look at me. He saw me at a market in his hometown and told his friend, 'That is the woman I'm going to marry.' His friend laughed at him, said he was crazy. But your father, he always said, 'Sometimes you just know.' It's not like that," he lied, mostly to himself. "She's young. She has dreams. I'm not going to be the one to mess that up for her." "Who says you will mess it up?" his mother countered, her gaze sharp. "Maybe you are the one who can help her dreams come true. You are a good man, Jin-woo, despite your business. You deserve to be happy. And that girl, she sees you. Not the name, not the power of a mafia boss. She sees you. I see how she looks at you, too. She is nervous around you, yes, but it is not just fear. It is the nervousness of a young woman who likes a man and doesn't know what to do about it." 2 weeks later, Amara came to Jin-woo's imposing house on Beacon Hill to plan the menu with his mother. He deliberately stayed away for the first hour, giving them space. But curiosity got the better of him, and he found himself walking into the large, state-of-the-art kitchen to find the two women surrounded by stacks of cookbooks, handwritten recipes, and pages of notes, speaking rapid-fire in his mother's language, and occasionally breaking into laughter. Amara was dressed casually today, in jeans and a simple green sweater that made her hazel eyes look more gold than brown. Her hair was down for once, falling in soft waves past her shoulders, and Jin-woo had to consciously remind himself to breathe normally. "We are making wonderful progress," Mrs. Kwon announced happily. "Amara, she understands exactly what I mean about the flavors. She knows the difference between the cooking of the North and the South, between my village and the next one over." Amara laughed. "Your mother has very specific, very helpful memories. Most people just say, 'Make it taste like home,' but can't describe what that means. She's giving me exact details, the way her grandmother toasted the sesame seeds, the specific brand of fermented bean paste her aunt used. Because food is about memory," Mrs. Kwon said firmly. "It's about love, about who we are and where we come from." Exactly. Amara's enthusiasm was a bright light in the sterile kitchen. "That's what I want to capture. Not just good food, but your food. The food of your memories." Jin-woo leaned against the doorframe, watching them, a silent observer in his own home. There was something profound about seeing his mother so animated. And Amara, she wasn't treating this like a job. She was treating it like a sacred trust. "Your kitchen is amazing," Amara said, looking around with a chef's appreciation. Professional-grade stove, double ovens, a huge island. "If I had a kitchen like this at home, I would never leave. You can use it whenever you want." The offer came out of his mouth before he could think it through. "For practice, for your school projects, whatever you need," her eyes went wide. "I couldn't. That's too much." "It's just sitting here," he shrugged, trying to make the offer sound casual, practical. "I barely cook. It seems like a waste not to let someone who would actually use it properly have access to it. Besides," he added, "you'll need to do a test run for the party anyway. You might as well do it here, in the kitchen where you'll be cooking the actual dinner." She looked at his mother, who nodded encouragingly. "He is right. You should practice. And I would be a very happy taste tester." "Okay." Amara bit her lip, her excitement warring with her hesitation. "Okay. Thank you." That's incredibly generous. When Amara left that afternoon, clutching her notes, Teresa turned to Jinwoo, a satisfied smile on her face. "She is perfect for you, Manga." "No, you listen to me," she said, her voice taking on the tone that meant she would not be argued with. "I have lived in America for 35 years, and for 35 years, I have been homesick. I am tired, Jinwoo. Tired of speaking English when my heart wants to speak its own language. Tired of eating American versions of my food," her expression softened. "But that girl, she gave me a taste of home. And when I see you with her, I think maybe you can have what I could not have. Love and dreams together, not one or the other." She cupped his face in her hands. "Be brave, my son. Be brave." That Sunday, Amara showed up at 10 in the morning with bags of groceries and a notebook filled with detailed prep plans. "Thank you again for letting me use your kitchen," she said as he let her in. "Just cook," he said, helping her carry the bags. "My mother will be here at 2 to taste everything." He intended to leave her to it, but he found himself mesmerized. He grabbed a cup of coffee and settled at the kitchen island to observe. Gone was the shy waitress. This was a chef in her element, confident, focused, completely in control. She moved through his kitchen as if she owned it, her movements efficient and practiced. She muttered to herself in his mother's language, running commentary on temperatures and textures. "You do that a lot," he observed after a while. "Switch languages when you're focused." She looked up, seeming to realize she'd been speaking out loud. "Oh, sorry. It's a habit. My mother always cooked in her language. Said it made the food taste better. I guess I picked it up from her. Don't apologize. It's nice. Reminds me of my own mother in the kitchen when I was a kid." The hours passed in a comfortable quiet, punctuated by the sounds and smells of her cooking. At some point, she started asking him to taste things, a spoonful of sauce, a piece of perfectly fried vegetable pancake. Each time, she would watch his face anxiously for his verdict. "It's perfect," he'd say, and she would frown. "Just perfect? What's wrong with it? Too much salt? Not enough garlic?" "It's perfect," he clarified. "I'm just not qualified enough to give you the detailed feedback you're looking for." When Mrs. Kwan arrived, the kitchen smelled like heaven. Amara had 3 dishes plated beautifully. Mrs. Kwan took her first bite of the noodle dish she had spoken of, and her eyes filled with tears. "It is exactly right," she whispered. "Exactly like my grandmother made. How did you do this? How did you capture something I have not tasted in 40 years? You described it so perfectly." Amara's own eyes were bright. "I just wanted to honor your memories." After his mother left, practically floating on a cloud of nostalgic joy, Jinwoo helped Amara clean up. The large kitchen felt smaller now, more intimate, with just the 2 of them working side by side. "Your mother is a wonderful woman," Amara said as she wiped down the counters. "I know. She's been through a lot." He dried a pot, choosing his words carefully. "She came here for my father. She was only 19, and he convinced her to marry him and move to America. I don't think she ever realized how permanent it would be. That must have been incredibly hard. To leave your entire life behind at 19". "It was," he said, setting down the pot. "You give her a piece of that back. You have no idea what that means to her. or to me?" Amara turned to face him, her eyes soft and understanding. They stood there, looking at each other across the kitchen island, and Jinwoo felt the pull between them like a physical force. He wanted to close the distance to see if she'd pull away or lean in. But he was who he was, a mafia boss whose life was steeped in danger, and she was young, with a future full of bright dreams. "I should go," she said finally, breaking the spell. "I have an early shift tomorrow." "Let me drive you home," he insisted. In the car, after he pulled up in front of her modest apartment building, she turned to him. "Thank you," she said. "For today, for letting me use your kitchen. For believing in me when you barely even know me." "I know enough," he said, his voice low as he looked at her. "You're special, Amara. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you're not." His mother's birthday party was a triumph. The 12 guests were transported to another time and place by Amara's food. His mother cried 3 separate times, tears of pure happiness. After the guests had left and his mother had gone home, he found Amara in his kitchen, diligently finishing the cleanup. "That was incredible, Amara," he said, picking up a dish towel to help. "You made her so happy." "She made me happy, too," she replied, a tired but satisfied smile on her face. Seeing her face when she tasted the food, that's everything I want my cooking to do. "You're going to change the world," he heard himself say. "One meal at a time." She laughed softly. He set down the towel and turned to face her. The time for pretending was over. "Why are you so nice to me?" she asked suddenly, her gaze direct. "And please don't say it's just because of your mother. This feels like more than that." This was it. The moment to be honest or to let her walk away forever. "Because," he said carefully, his voice steady, "I think you're remarkable. I think you're talented and driven and passionate about something that matters. I think you see the world in a way most people don't. And I think anyone who gets to be a part of your life is incredibly lucky." Her breath hitched. "Jinwoo." "I'm not asking for anything," he continued, needing her to understand. "I know you have plans. I know you're going places. I just want you to know that you are not invisible. You are not just the waitress or the chef. You are someone worth noticing." She took a small step toward him, her eyes searching his face. "What if I want you to ask for something?" she whispered. "You said you're not asking, but what if I want you to? What if I've been hoping you would?" Her voice was barely audible. "I'm scared, Jinwoo. I've been scared of you since that first night. Scared of how you make me feel. Scared that this is real and terrifying and something I can't control." She took another step, closing the distance between them. "But I think I'm more scared of not trying, of letting fear make me miss something that could be beautiful. If we do this," he said slowly, his heart pounding, "I need you to know what you're getting into. My life is complicated. There are things about my family, my business. As a mafia boss, there are realities that might make you want to run. I know who you are." Her voice was steady, unwavering. "I've always known. And I'm still here." "Take me to dinner," she interrupted, her voice gaining strength. "A real date. Somewhere that's not my job. Let me decide for myself if this is something I want." He should have said no. He should have protected her from his world, let her chase her dreams without the weight of his name dragging her down. But when he looked at her, so brave and scared and hopeful all at once, he found himself saying, "Friday night. I'll pick you up at 7-inch. Their first date was at a small, elegant French restaurant, a place where they could talk without being overheard. They talked for 3 hours about everything. And over dessert, she asked the question he'd been dreading. "Your business. The family business. How bad is it?" So he told her. Not everything. There were things he would never tell anyone, but enough. The illegal gambling operations, the protection rackets that funded their legitimate businesses, the violence that was sometimes an unavoidable part of his territory, the strict code his family lived by. She listened without judgment, her face carefully neutral. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Are you going to run?" he asked, his voice tight. "No." She looked at him, her eyes clear and resolute. "I'm not going to run. But I need you to understand something. I can't be a part of that world. The illegal side of it. my career, my dream. It depends on my reputation. I can't risk that. I would never ask you to. And, she continued, I need to keep pursuing my dreams. If I get an opportunity in the capital of my mother's homeland or in Paris or Tokyo, I need to be able to take it. I know, he said. So, she asked, where does that leave us? He reached across the table and took her hand. It leaves us figuring it out together. One day at a time. When he dropped her off, she kissed him. It was soft and brief and perfect. Over the next 3 months, they built something that felt real and solid. Their first real kiss happened one Tuesday night, slow dancing in his kitchen. When they pulled apart, she whispered, I'm falling in love with you. I'm already there, he replied. In April, reality came crashing back. Amara came to his house with an envelope in her hands and tears in her eyes. It was a letter from a Michelin 3-star restaurant in her mother's home city, offering her a 6-month stage position starting in September. This is good news, he said, his own heart sinking. This is your dream. I know, she cried. But 6 months and maybe longer. What about us? You can't just leave your position as the city's most powerful mafia boss. He pulled her into his arms. We will figure it out. Your entire life is your career, your dreams. I will not be the person who asks you to give that up for me. He kissed her forehead. You are going in September. You're going to work your ass off and learn everything you can. And I will be here, supporting you every step of the way. The summer passed in a blur of bittersweet moments. His mother was the one who gave him the hard truth. You cannot just pretend she is not leaving, she told him one night. That girl will give up her dreams for you, if you let her. And one day, she will resent you for it. You need to be brave. Give her a reason to come back to, or give her permission to fly free. This in-between will break both of you. 2 weeks before she was scheduled to leave, he asked her to come to his house. I've been thinking about what happens after your internship, he began, taking her hands. You might get a permanent offer there. Or offers from other restaurants in other cities. Tokyo, London, Rome. That's what I'm afraid of, she whispered. That we'll lose each other. What if you didn't have to choose, he said, his gaze intense. What if home wasn't a place but a person? What if I came with you? Not to the capital, I know you need to do that on your own. But after. If you get an offer in Rome, or Tokyo, or anywhere else, what if I came with you? You can't, she breathed. Your family, your business as a mafia boss. My second-in-command is capable. With technology, I can manage the legitimate businesses from anywhere. The rest we figure out how to leave behind, he cupped her face. Amara, you are my home now. My future. Where you go, I want to go. But your mother? He smiled. I talked to her. She said it was time for her to go home, too. She's been wanting to for years, but didn't want to leave me. If I'm leaving, she's free to go back to her village. She launched herself into his arms, sobbing with relief and love. So here's the plan, he said, holding her tight. You go. You be amazing. I'll visit. And when your 6 months are up, we reassess. If you get an offer elsewhere, we go there. Together. The 6 months were the hardest of his life. He visited twice, his heart swelling with pride as he watched her command respect in a world-class kitchen. She was thriving. Near the end of her internship, she called him. The chef offered me a permanent position, she said. He held his breath. I haven't said yes yet. Because I've been thinking. I want to go to Italy. I want to learn from the Italian masters. And I want to do it with you by my side. And that's exactly what they did. In March, Jinwoo and Amara moved to Rome. He had spent the previous months carefully legitimizing his assets and delegating his Boston operations, preparing for a new life. His mother had already moved to her childhood village, happier than he had ever seen her. Amara secured a position at a 2-Michelin-star restaurant in Rome, and Jinwoo rented them a beautiful apartment with a view that made her cry when she first saw it. 1 year later, on a Sunday afternoon in his mother's garden in her home village, Jinwoo got down on one knee. Amara Jones, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You changed my life. You taught me that love means supporting someone's dreams, even when it means changing your own. Will you marry me? Through tears of joy, she said yes. They married 6 months later. 3 years after that, Amara was offered the position of executive chef at a new, intimate restaurant in the city. She accepted, and their restaurant, named Nona's in honor of where their story began, became one of the most celebrated in Rome. 5 years after that first Friday night, they sat in his mother's garden, watching the sunset over the sea. Do you ever regret it? She asked, her head on his shoulder. Leaving it all behind? Your old life. Not for a second. He kissed the top of her head. It was the best decision I ever made, even though I dragged you halfway across the world. Especially because you did, he said, pulling her closer. I was stagnant, Amara.
Stuck.
You gave me permission to want something different. She tilted her face up to kiss him. I love you. Always and forever, he replied. From inside the house, their mothers called that dinner was ready. They stood, hand in hand, and walked toward the light and warmth and love waiting for them. This was home. Not a place on a map, but here, in this moment, with these people, building a life that honored both tradition and dreams. This was everything.